Hi, welcome my channel. Today's story is about betrayal, strength, and freedom. Elena Carter gave her all to a family that never accepted her until one moment changed everything. Stay tuned. Elena Carter had always believed that marriage made you part of a family. That love and dedication could bridge any divide. When she married Luca Rossi, she thought she was stepping into a new life, not just as a wife, but as a true member of the Rossi family. Owners of one of the most prestigious vineyards in Northern California, she had spent the past 5 years proving herself, working tirelessly to manage the vineyard alongside Luca, attending every family event, cooking and cleaning whenever they hosted gatherings, and making herself available at a moment's notice whenever someone needed help. She wasn't just a wife, she was an asset. And she convinced herself that this was what belonging looked like. She had learned early on that Viviana Rossi, her formidable mother-in-law, was not an easy woman to impress. Viviana commanded the vineyard with an iron grip, overseeing everything from production to finances. And though she had never openly rejected Elena, she had never truly welcomed her either. The other women in the family, Luca's brothers' wives, had warned her in hushed voices. "She'll never see you as one of us." But Elena had brushed them off, determined to prove them wrong. She had believed that if she worked hard enough, gave enough, and sacrificed enough, she would eventually earn her place. And yet, 5 years had passed, and nothing had changed. She was always on the outside looking in. She ignored the little slights. The way Viviana still introduced her to vineyard guests as Luca's wife instead of by her name. How she was never included in important family decisions. How even the vineyard workers, people she managed daily, seemed to take their cues from Viviana when it came to respecting her. But she convinced herself it didn't matter. That love and patience would be enough to bridge the distance. That belief shattered the morning they stood at the private airport terminal. Bags packed and excitement buzzing in the air. It was supposed to be a dream vacation, a week at a luxury resort in Tuscany. Sipping wine and escaping the chilly winter back home. Luca had talked about it for months, telling Elena how much she'd love it. She had been looking forward to it, imagining herself finally relaxing with her in-laws, proving, one last time, that she belonged. But then it happened. As the family stood in line, Viviana handed out the plane tickets. One by one. Luca, his brothers, their wives, even the children, everyone received theirs. Elena waited, holding out her hand, expecting the slip of paper that would affirm she was part of them. It never came. She blinked, confusion settling into her stomach like a stone. "Viviana, I think you forgot mine." Viviana looked up, eyes flicking over Elena with a carefully measured expression. Then, with a shrug, she simply said, "Oh, I must have forgotten. Oh well." And just like that, everything became clear. For a long moment, Elena simply stared at Viviana, waiting for her to laugh, to realize her mistake, to hand over the missing ticket. But the moment never came. Instead, her mother-in-law turned away, busying herself with making sure everyone else had their passports. As if Elena wasn't even there. A strange, cold numbness spread through her chest. She had sent Viviana her passport details weeks ago when she had asked for them. She had even reminded her last week. There was no way this was an accident. But still, she clung to hope. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. An oversight. Maybe Luca would step in and fix this. She turned to her husband, expecting to see shock or outrage on his face, some kind of reaction that told her he cared. That he understood how deeply wrong this was. But Luca only rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like a man trapped in an uncomfortable situation. "Babe, it's just a mistake," he said, not even looking her in the eye. "I'm sure Mom didn't mean anything by it." A mistake. Elena's fingers curled into fists. She looked around at the rest of the family, waiting for someone, anyone, to speak up. But nobody did. Luca's brothers were busy checking their tickets, pretending not to notice. Their wives exchanged awkward glances but said nothing. Even the children were oblivious, chattering excitedly about the resort's infinity pools and horseback riding trails. No one was surprised. No one was shocked. Because they all knew. They had all known. The realization hit her like ice water down her spine. They had never intended to include her. They had let her believe she was a part of this family. Let her sacrifice, work, and contribute, all while knowing that when it really mattered, when it came time to truly treat her as one of them, they never would. She had been useful to them. That was all. She swallowed back the bitterness rising in her throat. "But I sent you my passport information," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You asked for it." Viviana sighed dramatically, as if Elena was the one being difficult. "Well, I suppose it's too late now," she said, flashing that sweet, patronizing smile that Elena suddenly realized she had seen 1,000 times before. "But it's not all bad. Dear, the vineyard still needs managing while we're gone. You can stay behind and take care of things. You'll be useful." Useful. It was the final blow. Not a daughter-in-law. Not a valued member of the family. Not someone they cared enough about to include in their plans. No, to them, she was a free worker. A convenient extra. Someone to pick up the slack while they relaxed in luxury. She had two choices. She could cry, beg Luca to fix this, plead for her place, but deep down, she already knew he wouldn't. If he had any intention of standing up for her, he would have done it by now. So she did the one thing none of them expected. She smiled. A slow, controlled, almost amused smile, one that made Viviana's eyes narrow just slightly, as if sensing something had shifted. "Of course, Viviana," Elena said smoothly. "You're right. The vineyard does need looking after." Viviana's satisfaction was almost tangible. Her shoulders relaxing. "Exactly, dear. You're so understanding." Elena just nodded. She had already made her decision. She turned on her heel, walking away before anyone could see the fire burning beneath her calm exterior. They had played her for 5 years. They were about to find out exactly how big a mistake that was. Elena drove back to the vineyard in absolute silence. The only sound the hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. But she refused to let the rage bubbling inside her break through. Not yet. She had spent 5 years convincing herself that if she worked hard enough, if she was patient and loyal, they would accept her. She had thrown herself into the Rossi family with everything she had. Managing the vineyard, attending every dinner, showing up to help whenever Viviana called, trying to prove that she deserved to be part of them. And yet, today, standing in that airport, she had seen the truth in their eyes. She had never been one of them. She wasn't devastated, not anymore. She was furious. The betrayal wasn't just about the forgotten plane ticket. It was years of being overlooked, of being treated like an outsider. A worker rather than a wife. A convenience rather than a family member. The vineyard had become her entire life, and yet it wasn't hers. She had worked harder than anyone. Waking before dawn to handle shipments. Meeting with distributors. Keeping things running smoothly while Viviana basked in the credit. And Luca? He had stood by, watching, benefiting, saying nothing, no more. By the time she reached the vineyard, the anger had cooled into something sharper. Something more dangerous, clarity. They expected her to stay. To quietly accept her place like she always had. To keep their world running while they sipped wine in Tuscany. They expected her to nod and smile and be useful. But Elena wasn't going to be useful anymore. She pulled out her phone and started making calls. The vineyard was too large for one person to manage alone. It relied on a team of workers who had been just as undervalued as she had. Viviana had been delaying their wages for months, always promising that payments were coming soon. Many of them had already left. The few that remained were only holding on out of loyalty or desperation. She called each of them one by one. Elena? Manuel, the head worker, sounded hesitant when he picked up. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said, her voice smooth. "I just wanted to let you know that you're free for the rest of the week. Take some time off." There was a long pause. "All of us? All of you?" Another silence. Then a wary question. "Does Viviana know about this?" Elena smirked. "She will." The relief in Manuel's voice was palpable. "Thank you, Elena. We needed this." She hung up and made another call. And another. One by one, she set them all free. By the end of the hour, the vineyard was empty. Viviana had assumed she would stay behind. That she would work herself to exhaustion keeping everything running. She had counted on Elena's obedience. And that was her biggest mistake. With the workers gone and the estate completely abandoned, Elena took the next step. She walked into the bedroom she had shared with Luca for the past 5 years and pulled out a suitcase. Slowly, deliberately, she packed her things, her clothes, her books, the few personal items she actually cared about. When she reached the closet, her eyes landed on Luca's side, his perfectly pressed shirts, the expensive watch she had bought him for their anniversary, the cologne she had once loved. Her fingers hovered over his wedding ring, the one he never wore. She picked it up, turned it over in her palm. Then, without a second thought, she dropped it on the dresser and zipped up her bag. She was done. There was only one last thing left to do before she walked away from all of it. She sat at the kitchen table, picked up a pen, and began to write. Elena sat at the kitchen table, pen poised over the crisp sheet of paper, her mind surprisingly clear. This wasn't a goodbye note, it was a statement. A reckoning, a final act of defiance. The words flowed easily, each sentence laced with the quiet fury of a woman who had given everything and received nothing in return. Dear Viviana, since you were so kind to forget my ticket, I figured I'd return the favor. I've taken the liberty of giving the Vineyard workers a well-earned break. The barrels still need checking, the shipments still need coordinating, and the vines still need tending, but I trust you'll handle it beautifully. After all, you always say how much you love the Vineyard. Oh, and don't worry about me, I've made other plans. Ones that don't involve being used as unpaid labor while my husband watches in silence. Enjoy your vacation, you're going to need the rest. Best, Elena. She folded the letter neatly and placed it dead center on the marble countertop, where Viviana would see it the moment she returned. No confusion, no excuses, just the truth, laid bare. With that done, she stood, surveying the house that had never truly been hers. The spacious kitchen where she had prepared meals for the family who never invited her to sit. The living room where she had laughed at their jokes, hoping to be included. The hallways where she had walked, unseen, unheard, existing but never belonging. But the weight was gone now. She grabbed her suitcase and strode toward the door. As she passed through the foyer, her eyes landed on one last piece of unfinished business. Her wedding ring. The small, delicate band sat untouched on the dresser, a symbol of 5 years of compromise, sacrifice, and silent suffering. She picked it up, rolling it between her fingers for a brief moment. Then, without hesitation, set it down beside the letter. No regrets, no second thoughts. With one final glance around, Elena stepped outside, her suitcase rolling smoothly over the gravel path. The cool evening air filled her lungs, crisp and fresh, a stark contrast to the suffocating weight she had carried for too long. She had spent years trying to prove her worth to people who had already decided she wasn't enough. But she saw the truth now. She had never been the problem. As she reached her car, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. She could already picture it in her mind, the moment Viviana walked through the door, expecting everything to be in order, only to find the Vineyard in disarray, the workers gone, and Elena's words waiting for her like a slap to the face. They had expected her to stay. Instead, she was finally leaving. The first message came just after midnight. Luca. Babe, where are you? Mom's really upset. Call me back. Elena smirked as she sat in the quiet of her beachfront hotel, sipping a glass of wine, her own choice. For once, she didn't respond. She knew exactly what was happening back at the Vineyard. Viviana had returned to a disaster. The workers were gone, the fields untouched, the shipments uncoordinated, and there was no one left to clean up the mess. For the first time, Viviana was forced to deal with the reality of running the estate without her most reliable pawn. By morning, the floodgates had opened. Elena, this is unacceptable. You abandoned your responsibilities. You need to fix this now. Viviana, what the hell is going on? The Vineyard is falling apart. Matteo, Luca's brother. Elena, this isn't funny. Mom is furious. You need to come back and sort this out. Luca. She didn't even bother opening Viviana's emails, though she could imagine them, dripping with entitlement and self-righteous outrage. The messages started off demanding, then quickly turned into accusations. I can't believe you would do this to us after everything we've done for you. Viviana. Elena actually laughed out loud at that one. Everything they'd done for her? What had they done, besides take advantage of her, use her as free labor, and dismiss her like she was nothing? By that evening, Luca's tone had changed. Elena, come on. Can we at least talk? Mom is just upset. She didn't mean to leave you behind. It was a mistake. A mistake. That word again. But mistakes happen once. Maybe twice. This had been a pattern. She ignored him. The longer she stayed silent, the more desperate they became. The third day, the tone of their messages shifted again, from demanding to begging. Elena, please, Mom doesn't know what to do. The workers won't come back. The vineyard is a disaster. She's losing control. Matteo. Good, she thought. Let her lose control. For years, Viviana had expected Elena to pick up the slack, to keep the business running while she reaped the rewards. Now, she was finally facing the consequences of her own neglect. Then, one final text from Luca that nearly made her choke on her wine. Mom says if you don't come back and fix this, she doesn't want you in the family anymore. Elena stared at the message, stunned for only a second before a slow, amused smile spread across her face. She had already walked away. She had already chosen herself. And for the first time in years, she was completely, beautifully, free. Elena should have expected it. Luca showing up. The desperation in his messages had been growing. The calls piling up unanswered. She hadn't blocked him yet, not because she wanted to talk, but because she wanted to see just how far he would go. And now, here he was, standing in front of her at the small cafe where she had agreed to meet him. Looking exhausted, unshaven, and completely out of his depth. She barely looked up as he slid into the seat across from her. Elena. His voice was tight, controlled, but the frustration in his eyes gave him away. Are you kidding me? She took a slow sip of her coffee, letting the silence stretch. I don't know, Luca. What part do you think is a joke? He exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. Mom is losing her mind. The vineyard is falling apart. She thought you'd at least be responsible enough to. Elena set her cup down with deliberate slowness, cutting him off with nothing more than a look. Responsible? She repeated, arching a brow. Tell me, Luca, exactly when did the vineyard become my responsibility? His jaw clenched, but he didn't answer. He knew. You left us in chaos. Elena, he finally muttered. Everything is a mess. We need you back. There it was. The real reason he was here. Not for her. Not to apologize. Not because he finally realized how terribly his family had treated her. But because they needed her. Because without her, the foundation of their carefully crafted world was crumbling. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. That's unfortunate. Elena. His voice dropped lower, as if trying to reason with her. Mom didn't mean to leave you out. It was a mistake. She wasn't thinking. A mistake. Again. The words should have stung. But now, they only fueled her certainty. Right, she said, tilting her head. Just like it was a mistake when she never included me in any real family decisions. Just like it was a mistake when she treated me like an outsider for 5 years. Just like it was a mistake when she expected me to work myself to the bone while she took all the credit. Luca sighed, rubbing his temples. It's just how things are. Elena, you know that. And that was the moment she truly, finally knew. It wasn't just about Viviana. It had never been. It was about Luca, too. He had always known how his mother treated her. He had always seen it. Always understood that she was being used, dismissed, and taken for granted, and he had accepted it. He had stood by, silently complicit, because it was easier than standing up for her. Elena leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. You know what the worst part is? She said. Voice soft but steady. I expected Viviana to treat me like this. I knew she never really saw me as family. But you? She let out a small, bitter laugh. You were supposed to choose me. Luca, you were supposed to have my back. For the first time since he sat down, Luca looked shaken. Elena, he started, but she held up a hand, stopping him. No, she said simply. You don't get to talk your way out of this. You had 5 years to stand up for me. 5 years to prove that I mattered to you as much as your family did. She stood, grabbing her purse. And you never did. His fingers tightened around the edge of the table. So that's it? He asked. Voice strained, almost panicked. You're just walking away? She gave him a slow, calm smile. I already did. She turned and walked out of the cafe without looking back. This time, she knew he wouldn't follow. Because deep down, Luca finally understood what he had lost. The next morning, Elena walked into the law office with a sense of finality that felt almost surreal. This was it. The last tie binding her to the Rossi family would soon be severed. And she felt lighter than she had in years. The receptionist led her into a sleek office, where a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor gestured for her to sit. "You want to file for divorce?" the lawyer asked, flipping open a notebook. "Yes," Elena said without hesitation. The lawyer nodded. "Any joint property? Shared accounts?" Elena almost laughed. "No. The house belongs to Luca's family. The vineyard, too. I don't want anything from them." The lawyer studied her for a moment. "You've worked on that vineyard for years. You might have a legal claim to compensation." Elena shook her head. "I don't want a single thing that ties me to them." That was the truth. She had poured her sweat, time, and energy into the vineyard. But she wanted no part of it anymore. Money, land, possessions, none of it mattered. What mattered was her freedom. The lawyer nodded. "We'll start the paperwork today." For the first time since she walked out of the airport, Elena felt truly, completely at peace. 2 days later, as she was packing up her things in her new apartment, her phone buzzed with an email. "Viviana. Subject: You ungrateful little." Elena didn't bother reading the rest. She simply hit delete. Another message followed, this time from Luca. "Elena, please, can we at least talk? I don't want this to end like this." It had already ended. Without a second thought, she blocked his number. That was it. The last thread connecting her to them was gone. No more demands, no more expectations, no more waiting for a family that had never truly wanted her. For the first time in years, she was free. Elena woke up to the sound of silence, and for the first time in years, it wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. No texts from Viviana demanding favors. No calls from Luca making excuses. No last-minute requests for her to drop everything for someone else. Just quiet. Blissful quiet. She stretched in bed, feeling a weightlessness she hadn't known in years. Her new apartment was small but entirely hers. No vineyard to tend to. No estate to manage. No expectations to fulfill. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't defined by someone else's needs. She had started painting again, something she had abandoned after marrying Luca. Too busy proving herself to people who never cared. She reconnected with old friends. People she had lost touch with because she was always too busy being the perfect wife. Most importantly, she started dreaming again. For years, her life had revolved around the Rosses and their vineyard, their needs, their expectations. But now, she was asking herself what she wanted. And she wanted to travel. Not a week-long vacation, not a quick getaway. She wanted to see the world. And nothing was stopping her anymore. A few days before her departure, as she was sorting through her things, she found a dusty old box tucked in the back of her closet. Inside were remnants of her old life, anniversary cards, a wedding photo, little trinkets that had once meant something. She didn't hesitate. She took the entire box and dumped it in the trash. No second thoughts, no nostalgia, no regrets. Because she wasn't that woman anymore. The day Elena left for the airport, there was no dramatic send-off. No one begging her to stay. Just her, her suitcase, and the open road ahead. As she stood in the terminal, waiting for her flight, she thought back to that moment at the private airport with the Rosses, how Viviana had looked her in the eye and dismissed her like she was nothing. How no one had spoken up. How she had walked away feeling like she had lost something. But now, standing on the brink of something new, she realized she had gained everything. Her phone buzzed with a message. "Anna, I just wanted to say that I admire what you did. I should have spoken up at the airport. But I didn't. I regret it." Elena stared at the words, debating whether to respond. Anna had been just as silent as the rest of them that day. But maybe, just maybe, she had been trapped in her own cycle of obligation and expectation. Just as Elena had been. Before she could decide how to reply, another message popped up. "For what it's worth, you were right. Mom never saw you as family. And Luca, he never really fought for you. Did he?" Elena took a slow breath. No, he hadn't. And that was the real tragedy of their marriage. But she wasn't sad about it anymore. She typed back a short response. "I appreciate your message, Anna, I really do. But I've moved on. I hope one day you do too. She didn't wait for a reply. It didn't matter anymore. As the gate agent called for boarding, Elena picked up her bag and stepped forward, her past finally slipping away like dust in the wind. Leaving them wasn't a loss. It was the best decision she had ever made. The story of Elena Carter teaches a powerful lesson about self-worth, boundaries, and the courage to walk away from toxic relationships. For years, she believed that love and dedication would earn her a place in the Rossi family, only to realize she was valued only for what she could provide, not for who she was. Her journey proves that no amount of effort can change people who refuse to see your worth. True family and love should never come at the cost of self-respect. In the end, choosing yourself, even when it's hard, is the most powerful decision you can make.